Welcome, folks. Another episode, another week, and another year of Two Chaps, Many Cultures. And to throw into the mix, in which we're talking about today, the mix of cultures, especially adding that mix to the wonderful upbringing of children across cultures and getting the wonderful results we see come out of it. Let's talk about that, shall we?
Good morning to everybody. Two Chaps, Many Cultures episode. What is it? I forgot the number. 120 something. 126, I guess.
It is 126, yes, absolutely.
How are you doing, mate?
I'm doing fantastic, mate. How was your weekend?
It brought about new beginnings, so it was perfect. And as our guest, today's guest told me in the green room, like him, I started the year negative.
Negative? Oh.
Yeah,
Okay.
because I am COVID negative. That's
Yes.
good news.
That is good news. That is good news. Absolutely, yes. Well, I did a bit of cooking over the weekend, so, I love the theme of doing mixing today because it's great. It did a bit of cooking. Some of it came out, some of it didn't. But
What did you cook? Tell me. Lamb?
No. I'm actually looking at it's actually with sweet stuff, and I'm doing a bit of experimenting, got some stuff coming up and yeah.
Invite me when you got it down pat, okay?
Yeah, right. They say you just want the good stuff, right?
All right.
No worries.
Welcome, everybody. Another episode of Two Chaps, Many Cultures, the program of the culture of business and the business of culture. And today we have a guest that is doing what a lot of you out there in the world are doing. You're raising children with multiple family traditions because one tradition comes from one culture and another tradition comes from another culture. And how do you keep them in harmony? And how do you keep them apart if you want to? How do you tell your kids which is which? Here today to talk about this is Nguvi Kahiha. Welcome, Nguvi.
Good morning. Good morning. Hello, everyone.
Good morning. How are you doing, Nguvi?
I'm doing super fantastic. I can't complain. Looking forward to a great 2021.
Excellent. So, Nguvi, you're raising kids with mixed traditions.
Correct.
How is that? Why would you do that? Why would you make it complicated?
I wish I would have known before. but I love my little girls. I got daddy's little girl, but I call them 3 and 5 years old. Best thing that happened to me. So I'm enjoying every part of it, so I'm very happy to be a dad. I'll tell you that.
Good. Yeah. So
Yeah.
in your family, which traditions come together in your family?
Well, let's put it this way: I'm originally from Berlin, Germany, so born and raised, spent there all my life, and then came to the U.S. in the late '90s, and so there's one thing that we really shared in Germany, which was Christmas, right? So that was our big celebration where all our family came together on Christmas Eve, and when we grew up, one thing was that really got us kept in check for the entire year is. Santa Claus actually showed up, in Germany. He shows up, knocks on your door around 4 or 5 p.m. with a big bag. You let him in and, and he'll brings a list of all the things you've done naughty and nice, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and then, and then you kind of have to explain yourself to Santa, right? Why you did that and why you didn't. Well, here in the U.S., everything happens overnight, so Santa, he's not knocking on the door. He's climbing through the chimney. And so you don't really, have that conversation with them. So that's one of the tradition, that I really wanted to instill here to my kids in the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
The other two that we do around Christmas time is St. Nicholas, which we have not done yet. St. Nicholas comes, beginning of December. You put the shoes out, clean them, and then St. Nicholas puts some chocolate or some candy in there.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something that is planned for next year. And then we do the 4 Advents. Every Sunday when we get together, we have our candles set up and light one candle every Sunday before Christmas. And this year we actually started that tradition. So where we had Advent, and because of COVID, everything is now, video conference. We actually had a Zoom family call on second Advent, which was really neat. So I had my family. I have a brother who lives in Amsterdam, had family in Hamburg and in Berlin. So we all dialed in and we all did Advent together. So
when you talk about the Santa Claus or Weihnachtsmann coming to your house with a bag, with a sack made of jute, I don't know what that is in English. It's natural fiber.
Yeah.
So to me, there's always been this accountability piece, right? So you have to justify your action before the man with the white beard.
Yeah.
So there's also some kind of, I would argue, a little bit of scare in it for the little kids. Oh, who is this stranger with this strange getup and coming into our house and knowing everything I did? Who told him that? So there is this, almost a parenting element to that, which is completely not there in the US tradition, where there is this mythical figure flying through the sky on his sled and dropping stuff through the chimney, right? So for you, for your kids, do they recognize that their friend? You live in the Greater Atlanta area. Let's put this into context. So do your kids' friends explain that, or does that come up in conversation at their age yet?
Well, yes and no. So this is the first time Santa shows up. And this is one thing that we did where we kind of mixed the tradition, right? Because I haven't, there's another part to it, because my wife and I, we talked about, well, what are we going to tell the kids? Why is he showing up, right? I mean, it's not common here in the US. Well, this year we also did something I never heard of, which was elf on the shelf. Right? Something that we don't do in Germany, right? There is an elf, and then he comes and he kind of watches you, and then he flies back and he reports back to Santa everything that you've been doing, nice and naughty, and then you just move him around the house. And every morning my kids woke up just running around trying to find elf. So our elf's name was Nina, so our kids called her Nina. And then when you touch her, she will lose her power, and then all kind of other stories. I don't know the full stories, because like I said, it was the first time I learned about it. Well, so we decided to mix cultures, right? We told our kids, well, in coincidentally, it was raining really bad on Christmas Eve here in Atlanta. And I was telling the kids, hey, listen, because it's raining, Nina can't fly back home to see Santa. So we don't know how she's going to make it back. So then Santa comes, knocks on the door around 6 p.m. and says, hey, I'm here to pick up Nina because she can't fly home. Right. So there was a perfect way to mix both culture for them not to be scared for Santa to come, because then, he had a reason to be there. So they appreciated that, and they also appreciate Nina leaving, right? So that went really well.
Are your kids watching this right now, or will they ever see this? Or
yeah. They're right now. I mean, they're at home right now, but they're downstairs because they're not going to school today.
Okay, so we better not bring up the question of who that Santa was, right?
Yeah, yes, we can. Yes, we can. They won't hurt. But it was a good friend of mine, someone that also was on your show. So a good friend of mine. I'm watching your show, so so I know he was on your show, and he decided and agreed to play Santa. So it was important for us to have a Santa coming that actually knows my kids. So, because, and they didn't recognize him because he had a full outfit on. So it was a great experience. I mean, the funny thing is, I don't even, want to say here, because like I said, my kids might watch it one day and they'll be embarrassed, but my kids cold-blooded lied at Santa. When he brought his list of everything that have been done naughty. You said this and that, and you didn't clean up your room. Nope, that wasn't me. They even said to him, I think you're at the wrong house. So it was amazing. And then afterwards, that felt bad. Afterwards, they actually recorded a video that they wanted me to send to Santa where they apologized for lying. But my oldest daughter said, look, we need to make sure we get our gifts. All right. So we had to do what we had to do. So my kids are something else, It's all, so
to get this straight, then your wife is not German, then, right?
She's not German, correct?
Okay. So your wife is from which culture?
Georgia. She's from Georgia. She's in
Georgia, USA. Not
Georgia, USA. Correct.
Yeah. Okay, good. Right. So she's American, and so you're marrying U.S. traditions and German traditions.
Correct.
So some might watch this and say, Nguvi Kahiha does not strike me as a typical German name.
Correct.
So where does the Germanness come in?
So again, my dad was actually from Namibia, Southwest Africa, and then escaped during the apartheid, became an engineer, got an engineering degree in Krakow, and then moved to Germany, worked for Siemens, and then where he met my mother, who was a nurse at that time, got married, had kids, and all of us got African names. So my brother and my sister, we all have African names that also have a meaning. So there's a kind of a tradition. So my daughters, they don't have an African first name, but all of them have an African middle name. So to keep that tradition up. So I have a cousin that I call in Namibia, and she actually picks the names. I picked the name for my kids.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So so we always had someone picking according to the African tradition. So so they have a Western, I will call it. It's actually a Latin name. Estella and Emilia are the first names, but they all have African middle names with all the meaning behind it.
So again, mixing different traditions, right?
Correct. So that's kind of what I took from my father's side, growing up, right? That all of our kids have that Namibian connection with a Herero name, which is the ethnic group my father is from.
Now, Brett knows a little bit about Krakow, right? So how long did your dad spend in Krakow, Nguvi?
It was before I was born, so I'm not sure exactly. But he went to university there, and then just when he finished, he moved to. I still have my father. Unfortunately, passed a while ago, but I still have his documents. So I have his university degree downstairs, and so that's kind of how I followed his steps. When I did my African research on my African side of the family, right? Because I wanted to learn more about my African identity. So that's when I followed his steps back from Namibia to Germany.
So that's kind of a self-directed inquiry, right? You've taken that and you've gone, I've got this heritage. I've got this wonderful heritage I know that I'm connected to. How much of that, I know you did your own research, but how much did he bring it into your lives growing up? That would be my question. Or was it, we work with people that said, I have this heritage, but our parents or grandparents never really made us a part of that because they thought, well, we're not really in it. So
yeah. Very good question. Yeah, I appreciate that question. So it was kind of difficult at the beginning, and my mother explained to me also at that point. My father was very intelligent, a very smart guy, and he was a linguist. So he was able to speak many languages. One language that he was not fluent in was German. So when he moved to Germany, he worked for Siemens. He was an engineer for Siemens. He had to improve his German. So my mother was kind of his, his teacher's force to help him speak German. And so when we all grew up together, we were trying to, to speak German with him, so that also he becomes more fluent in German. So he spoke already, but was one of the goals to have her speak German. So unfortunately, we didn't speak any foreign language at home when I grew up, right? So we did speak some English. Excuse me, we did speak some English, but we didn't really speak any foreign language. So my English that I speak today was learned, of course, a little bit at home, but mainly, then later on when I came to the US. So that was one, piece that kind of I want to change with my kids, right? I want my kids and Christian, with having kids as well, how beneficial it is for a person to start a foreign language very young, so, and not just the language piece of it, but also the cultural part of it, right? It's you can speak English, but if you don't understand the English of a particular culture or nationality you converse in or spend time in, it really doesn't do any good, right? There is a certain way how Americans speak English and how the language affects the culture versus in England, Australia, or even Canada, right?
Right.
So my goal was it from the beginning to allow now my kids to speak foreign language. We did. My father was there, and he told us a lot about Namibia. At this point, Brett, it was that Namibia was still under apartheid until the late 80s. So my father wasn't able to return back home during that time. So we had never the chance to actually go visit Namibia, in which kind of our father was the only bridge to that foreign country without never being there. And now bringing this back to something Chris and I talked earlier is, so I am a German, grown up in Germany with an African name, but I speak fluent German with a Berlin accent,
Yes, I can attest to that.
So, I got the Berliner Schnauze, like we say in Germany. So I grew up like a normal German kid. I've never been anywhere else, growing up. I only had an African father who was in my life, but I've never been to Africa. But every time someone asked me where I was from, I said, well, I'm from Germany. And then they said, no, where you're really from? And then I always had to claim a country that I've never visited. And suddenly I became the African. So, we were always culturally, historically, and socially disconnected from the German culture growing up because we were never 100% accepted, because there was always that African factor in there that they saw before everything else, even though there was only a minimum of us, that's the color and the name, that associated us to Africa, and of course my father. So that's something that growing up was very difficult, whatever you want to call it, or different, I would call it rather, because it was difficult, but it was rather different, and I would have had it a different way, because that's the person I became today. But this is also one thing that I want to instill in my kids, right? So that they are comfortable and understand who they are, and identify themselves with what they are.
Here's a fun part, because we talked about this in the green room a little bit, and I want you to expand on that. I'm just going to trigger it a little bit. So for many people that you met growing up as a young Berliner, people associated by looking at your name and your skin color that yes, you say you're German, but there's got to be something else to it because name and because color, right? So that there's that disconnect that a lot of people have in their cognitive experience. Now, for most Germans, that means to be German means to look like Brett and I, right? And we have a name with an umlaut in it, so I qualify 100%. So your kids, you told me your kids when you guys grew up, or when the kids grew up, that they associated being German with something else, right? So yeah. What was that?
So, well, so I have a sister. I actually have 3 sisters, and I have a brother. So they're all mixed, right? They all look like me, a little bit lighter, a little bit darker, depending on, the day of the month of the year, right? So, but they all, have an African look to them, and some of them have kids as well, and even their kids, although some of them have married whites, turned out much lighter than my kids or us, but they still have something in it. So for my kids, the only 2 non-black in our family are actually my grandmother Uma and her sister, and then of course the husbands of my sisters. But when most of the time when we're on these conference calls, or they see each other, or we're looking at pictures, growing up, they always see black faces. So and I always made sure that my kids understand that these people live in Germany, which you are part of, right? So that's where our educational piece come in. As we have a bunch of pictures hanging in their playrooms in the other room with all of them in there. We have a little puzzle game, so they understand these are part of their family. And also, of course, my wife, she's African American. So on her side also everyone is black, and in Atlanta it's a very African American strong population, so my kids are around a lot of black people, So probably a year ago, the oldest one, who's now 5, when she was 4, she made a comment that kind of changed my entire outlook on education again. And also my wife, we talked about that for a while. Is she said, well, Oma can't be German. She is white. Right. And then she also asked, why is Oma white? You know, yeah. Why is she white?
Because for your daughter, German means being black. Because
I mean, the majority of people
she knows are black, right?
Correct. So the majority of people, and I mean, of course, she has seen white people as well in Germany, but in our family, right? So you know, so my mother, you know, is, you know, our blood relation, if you're our DNA relation, right? So you know, we have, you know, again, my sister's married and have, you know, white people in our family, but my mother's actually my mother. So I had to kind of explain to her that. So when now this type of question comes in, right? Which I never really thought of at the beginning, because, you know, and although I should have thought of it, because that's kind of my identity, you know, challenge I had to go through, it kind of understanding that, you know, I'm black and white, and both, you know, although I'm not seeing as white, but, you know, so, and now I have to kind of, you know, trying to explain to my daughter that, yeah, you have a, you know, white Oma, you know, and they are, you know, there are a lot of white people in Germany and so on and so forth. But it was kind of
what the Oma is. Oma is the German word for grandmother.
Yes. Sorry about that. Yeah. So because we have grandma. These are all my wife's.
Of course, right.
And then
we
have
do the same
Oma.
in our family. It's hilarious.
Yeah.
So here's Margaret. She was on our program. She lives in Poland, and she's Polish Nigerian, and she can totally relate to the question, where are you really from? And you must be something else too. Says, Nguvi, thank you for sharing your insights, passing your mixed cultural identity and experiences to your children. Happy New Year. Thank you, Margaret.
Thank you, Margaret.
Margaret.
Thank you.
Yeah, Brett speaks Polish. Yeah, he I let him show off once in a while.
I can't speak German. I got to do something.
Right. And here's it shows me a LinkedIn user. I guess LinkedIn user is anonymous for now. My partner is Swiss German. His biological father is a black American, but was raised by 2 white parents in Switzerland. I'm a blank woman, born and raised in the United States with a German last name. It gets really interesting.
Yeah, I can see that. Yes.
It does get that.
You know, so, and, you know, Christian, one thing is, and one thing I like about America when it comes to that, right, especially for my kids, is when someone asks my kids here, you know, even with a funny name, right, they have, because if you think about it, my daughter is, well, I wouldn't call it funny. I think it's a very beautiful name, but, you know, it's 𝙒𝙭 Nguvi Kahiha, and then it's Emilia Nguvi Kahiha. So even if they, you know, have a non-American name and they ask me, hey, where are you from? And my sister, my kids say, we're from Atlanta, Georgia. The question ends. There's no other questions anymore. You know, that's it. So they don't have to explain themselves why they have a different sounding name.
Yeah.
You know, so and also for me, looking at, you know, in probably a lot of, you know, blacks who lived in Germany and moved to the US can relate to that as well, is, you know, I kind of, you know, if I just standing among people, I fit in, right? So, you know, as long as I don't have to say anything, you hear my accent or you see my name, I would fit in. No one would ask me, you know, he's different, right? Whereas in Germany, you always had that, you know, that explanation to do, you know.
That's the next question I have, Nguvi, because the whole racial inequality question that bubbled up to new heights in 2020 also reached Germany with a vengeance, I'd say stronger than ever I remember. So do you feel that being black in Germany has been changing? Or when you go back to Germany and have interactions with your German counterparts, do you feel that there's a different perception now than there was when you grew up?
Yeah, definitely. So especially when I go to Berlin. So Berlin always has been a very multicultural city itself because of the allies that has been there. So I was there when the Berlin Wall came down. So I've seen it before the wall, and then I've seen Berlin after the wall. And there was also a transition because before you had your sector. So you were an American, okay, that makes sense. You know, this makes sense. Now it's a huge melting pot where you see all kind of cultures, you know, mixed together. I go to Berlin maybe 4 times a year. So every time I'm there, I can tell it is a different city where you just see more black people walking down the street. And even if I walk by other people, they just don't turn around anymore and look at me.
Right.
So when I go into a store, this is one of the big differences I've realized is when I go to a store, they don't speak English to me. They actually speak German. So whereas back in the days, automatically everyone spoke English with me.
Because they assumed they had to speak another language with you.
Yeah, and imagine I had a really bad English back, when I was a teenager, and I had to trying to have a conversation with another German in English, So and this has changed. I think that Germany, especially Berlin, I can speak of everywhere, and I'm not there, on a regular basis. I can only speak from my experience when I'm home. That it definitely has changed. It has definitely changed to a more multicultural outlook on people.
Right. Now, Go ahead, Brett.
Oh, I just wanted to have a quick question about the language. So how are you, or what languages are you teaching your children? Obviously, is German the language? Is that the language you speak at home? Do you do one parent, one language? What's the practice that you do in that?
So, they say it's very easy. Just speak German to your kids, right? I tell you, this is one of the most underestimated, I totally, had no idea how difficult it is. Out of several reasons. Number one is that my wife, she doesn't speak German, right? So she only speaks English, right? And my wife, she's an educator. So she's a social worker. She knows about educating kids. She's very good at it. So she has, she really takes on the educational part of the home. She put it as on me to teach them German. So, there's a lot of patience you have to put in there. I mean, I have all the books. My kids can count to 10, even to 20, 30 in German. They understand certain commands, come here and essen, Hände waschen, but I had no idea how difficult it actually is. And especially when the kids suddenly tell you, say, no, Dad, no Deutsch. English, please. So, because for them, they have to kind of, kind of have to, they're the one that have to do the switch in their brain, and it could be difficult, right? So I started out good at the beginning when they were younger, and then I kind of, slacked a little bit, and also is because I do work a lot, so I'm on travel all the time. I'm out of the country, out of the city. I do real estate in Atlanta, so I work on weekends. So it's really hard for me, just to be home enough to really take the time and sit down hours. We do have German books, we do have German music, we do have watched German films, but it's just not sticking as good as I wish it would. But Christian, you probably have that experience too, right?
Well, Brett has it too. Brett's daughter grows up speaking Polish and English, and my girls grew up speaking German and English.
Well, we have an advantage here, I think, Nguvi, in the Chicago area for the Polish language, is that it is the largest diaspora outside of Poland, or one of the largest diasporas. So our daughter goes to a Polish school. She does science, English, math, all these kind of, not English, so science, math, all these kind of things, history in Polish, So, and I speak, a decent amount of it now. So it's basically, we do it at home. But we have this outside community, like the grocery store.
That really helps. If you have a social network, if you have a social network that supports the language acquisition, that is critical. So if you're the only one, if you're the only warrior, the only German warrior in your network, that'll make it hard for you, and it gets discouraging quickly. My advice would be, though, don't stop, don't give up. Because they retain more than you think they do.
Yeah, and we in Atlanta, we do have several schools, Brett, like you probably have in the Chicago area that teach German. We have a German-speaking church. We have the Goethe Institute. So my kids were, then you have, of course, you had COVID, but my kids are now getting to that age where we are, considering, looking into these institutions and facilities that are available to us, and just take them there, and also see. I mean, I want my kids to enjoy it and actually want to learn the language, right? I mean, it makes it even more difficult if they don't really into it. But my oldest, she sometimes
superpower movie is when the kids recognize that they have a secret language that allows them to communicate outside of their default language. It's like this, oh, we're special. Once that kicks in, oh, I have something that other kids don't have. Watch what happens.
Yeah, and I can see with our oldest daughter as well that she could be the one really appreciate that. So yeah, so we talked about it, but then COVID hit this year. So hopefully 2021 will allow us to tap into these resources. In most cities, most big cities have these resources. That allows you to to get your kids really connected early, linked in with these and then make friends even. So my sister, she has a son who is right between both of my daughter's age, and so we're hoping to be able to set up regular calls when they get a little bit older, that they can talk on the phone, and hope that they can speak then German. So it's a lot of plans, but just realizing it's always been very difficult lately.
So I have another tradition question. So in Germany, in most families in Germany that I'm familiar with, the Christmas tree stays up until January 6th, the day of Epiphany, and then the three wise men, the three kings come, and that's when we kick out the tree. At least that's how we do it in our family still. That's how I was brought up. How do you do it in your family, Nguvi?
Yeah, so we normally we do it. We actually took it down this weekend, just because we had some time available, and we had a relatively larger tree that we normally have. So it took a while to take this down, and we have a couple of busy weekends coming up. So we decided to do it this weekend. But normally, yes, we do that same here. We keep that up until the 6th of January.
Well, when did you put it up then?
I put it up but this is my tradition that I started. I put it up the weekend after Thanksgiving.
Okay, so that's the American way.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Good.
So I put it up that weekend on Thanksgiving. Put up the Christmas tree. For me, that's when Christmas season starts, right?
Okay. Got
it. This is when that goes up. Correct.
And do you guys? I mean, I don't know if you're religious in your family, but do you sing Christmas carols?
Yeah. Yes. Oh yeah. We do. So
and you sing in German as well?
Well, yes. We did on our conference call. Mm-hmm. So and my girls are now at the point where they sing Jingle Bell. This is their favorite song. So in and then when we are together with our German family, my sister, she loves to play the piano, and my mother sings, and so we starting it on they kind of bring this over to us, that tradition, the German songs, and then it starts with the Advents. That's where we started these Advents on Sundays, where we do Christmas stories and Christmas songs in German, and then hopefully that they will eventually learn it and be able to sing, as well. Right now, they're just now mastering Jingle Bells.
Nice.
That's great.
I can only say that having gone through it, I haven't completed the run yet. My kids are 18 and 15. And I think we're still teaching them a thing or two once in a while. They'll never admit it, but a few things they're still picking up from us. And having had the privilege and the opportunity to bring up kids in those different environments with these different traditions and different mentalities, creating third culture kids, basically raising third culture kids, that was both a challenge, I will agree. It wasn't always easy. However, seeing them now at their age right now, being able to effortlessly switch between different communication styles. My 18-year-old can go gung-ho German on you at the flip of a switch, and then she goes back into her Americanness. Whatever that, I'm saying her Americanness. It's not the Americanness, it's her interpretation of it. But seeing them being able to switch between the two without even thinking about it fills me with joy, because I remember when I had to do it and I failed miserably because I was so conscious while doing it or attempting to do it, and they they just do it, and it's the same for Emily, Brett's daughter. It will be very similar for your daughter, Nguvi. I have no doubt.
What I'm interested to see is also the cultural piece of it, right? So we German, we're very you either do it or you don't, right? So it's either black or white, so we're very, it's 8 o'clock, it's not 8:01, 7:59, it's 8 o'clock, right? We're very, there's that typical German correctness, that on timeness. So and sometimes still in me, right? And I always say, people say I have hard edges, but I say, well, no, I'm just German, so you either do it or you don't. I mean, I don't understand when you say I might do it. I don't understand what that means, right? So you do it or you don't. So and sometimes I still have that very strong, right? So I wonder how my kids will turn out, because I'm with my kids that the same way, right? So this, when the German comes through sometimes, where it's either yes or no, there's no real gray zone in between. So I'm interested to see how much they actually take from that German culture of mine, and also kind of then mix it with the American way of thinking. So that's going to be interesting to see when they grow up.
We have a witness here who knows you and your wife and the kids, and Trevor says you're doing a good job at balancing it in your household. I wonder if he may have a red coat in his closet. I wonder if
and a white beard.
Maybe he does.
Yes. He should. And I tell you, he did a great job. So if anyone's looking for a Santa Claus, reach out to Trevor. He did an amazing job with my kids.
So Nguvi, I have a question. You said about the culture, and you said about your style, the hard edge, right? The hard edge style. So what do you say? I mean, and you're in real estate, which is, I guess, an ostensibly a relationship-based business. You're building a network. You're building connections. This is really what I know. I don't do real estate, but I think that this is part of the success. So people from the outside of the US have this perception of the South of the US being very friendly, right? Very friendly and open. A lot of that comes from the African American experience, a community, this sense of community, a sense of connection. And you come along who looks like somebody from the outside who would be in that African American community, but you come along with this very kind of rigid, maybe sharp-edged kind of approach to life and business. How do you navigate that in your professional life? To me, that's an interesting question.
Yeah, so a very good point. I did have an advantage growing up very multicultural in Germany already. So, I went through the German school system, and I think this is where you learn it, right? Okay. Especially when you go up in 70s, 80s, up to the 90s. If you go to school in Germany, it's one of the best education I've ever, and I've been to different schools, but going to school in Germany was one of the best education, just from learning discipline and so on and so forth. I've been through. So, but then again, even growing up in Berlin, I was still surrounded by a multicultural environment, right? So through my father's side, so I kind of learned from the beginning, how to manage both, and how to apply which side. And then, of course, when I came to the US, I didn't move to the South first. I was in the Midwest several years before I came here, and I've been, I worked in sales, business development, in corporate America for 10 plus years before I came to Atlanta. I already kind of understood, the idea on how to do business, how important relationships are. I also lived 3 years in France, where I had my own consulting business, and I kind of had to, everything was built on relationships there as well. So something I've learned early on, in order for me to accomplish what I needed to accomplish. So, I think, because of my job and because of my career and where I did it, helped me to overcome that.
That's great.
Okay, then let me ask that question again with a little more pointedness. Zuspitz, would say in German.
This is a good cop, bad cop type.
Yeah. So in Black Mecca, also known as Atlanta, are you seen as one of the brothers because of your skin color, or do they say, "Oh, okay, that's Nguvi. He's the other kind of black"?
That's a good question, and I can't really 100% answer that. And I think it's from individual to individual differently, right? So I think that one comment I've heard, not as much in Atlanta, where maybe in the Midwest more often, is, hey, you're not black, you're German, right? And I know what they were trying to say, although they were using just the wrong terminology for it. They were pretty much saying you're not African American, you don't have the same history we have, your history is from Germany. So I've experienced it, but I also have to say that especially in Atlanta is the people is, especially if we talk about African Americans, they looked at me as an individual and they accepted me or did not accept me as an individual, right? So I've never felt like I was not part of them, because they just accepted me as who I was and what I was with the knowledge of, I might have a different background, and it might have helped. I don't know. In some circumstances, it might have was a disadvantage, but I stopped thinking about it because that's exactly the issue I had in Germany, trying to understand, well, what do they see me as, right? Mm-hmm. So I just want them to see me as Nguvi, as Nguvi that is German, and just leaving out that entire, generalization,
right,
of it, saying, hey, let's put them into a box.
Yeah, and it's funny because you said they told you you're not black, you're German. I had a similar experience here in Atlanta with my black friends, and they after a while, after they get to know me, they say, well, you're not white, you're German.
Yeah, so
they don't see me as a white American.
Correct.
So it's I think you and I were both seen as outsiders who don't have American baggage. We have our own baggage respectively wherever we come from, but the Americans that I hang out with, mainly the black Americans that I hang out with, they don't see me as a white American. They see me as, white guy, but he's German.
Yeah. Yeah, no, yeah, that's correct. So that's kind of, and they're kind of accepting you as whatever you are made of, right? So they're not saying, well, Christian, he's German, right? He said, no, that's Christian who happened to be
exactly
German, right?
Yeah.
So, and who happened to be white. So, and and this is actually also another thing that I had a discussion with someone else, kind of when we talk about different culture, race, and so on and so forth. The topic of, I hear the topic a lot is calling colorblind, or I don't see color, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which, what in a way they were saying, hey, we're just very open. We are, we don't make a difference between so and so. But I do actually teach and trying to raise my kids not to be colorblind and to see color, because that is what made, what people are made of, right? So if I see someone that happened to be, Native American, right? I need to understand that. I want to know that because it helps me to understand that person. Because I see it with myself is if I understand my background, I might have a better understanding of why I do certain things a certain way, why I'm thinking, and so on and so forth. So it's very important for my kids to see that too. Is if they see an individual who happen to be white, like my grandmother or their Oma, or if they see an Native American, or if they see, I don't know, whatever you can think of, that they understand there is a reason why, and they should appreciate it and accept it, right? So that's part of our education too, is just don't call it colorblind or I don't see colors. No, understand it and embrace it.
Yeah, I'm fully with you on that. Awesome. This was a good start in the week, I would say. It was fun. I love our conversation here. This is great. Thanks for taking time, Nguvi. And I mean, I have no skin in your game, but I would plead to you, keep it up with the German with your girls.
Yeah,
trust me, it'll do some magic.
Here they are, by the way. Can you holler?
Look at that.
Nice. Oh, cute. Okay, they got daddy wrapped around their little fingers. Got it. So
you know the trouble I'm in here.
We know. That's good trouble. That's another level of trouble right there.
Yeah. Daddy's little girls.
The good trouble. This is the city of good trouble, right?
Yeah.
Remember that. By the way, people, if you're in Georgia and you're legal and you're allowed to vote, tomorrow is the day. Don't slack off. If you haven't voted yet, Georgians, go vote. It's important. So that was my stump speech.
Absolutely. Very good.
Nguvi, thank you very much. This was
a
lovely. Keep it up. Keep up your good work with the girls, and I'll see you around town soon. Mask on and everything.
Yep.
And Brett and I will be back tomorrow with another fascinating topic. Aren't we going to be, Brett?
Absolutely. Definitely. We'll be here.
Ciao for now.
Great
Bye.
to see you, sir.
See you again.